I'm Donnell Stitting. Thank you for listening in. This is now my second YouTube video. I want to thank those of you who watched my first video on letting go of fear, perfectionism, and the need for certainty. I hope that you enjoyed the content from the first video and that you're taking action and applying it to your life. As I mentioned in my first video, the topic for this video is one that is near and dear to my heart: self-love. As I was preparing the content of this video, I saw this idea of needing it to be perfect popping up again as it had with my first video. The thoughts that were going through my head were similar to the ones with my first video, along with, I need to study more on self-love before I create a video on it, and am I truly embodying self-love to discuss it? It's then that I took the advice from my first video and I'm choosing to let go of perfectionism to move forward and create this video. As you can see, it's a work in progress and something I still face. And as you can see, I'm still reading the content for this video. So if perfectionism is something that you continue to have trouble with, you're not alone. And I hope this video will serve as another example of letting go of perfectionism and assist you in letting go of it as well. I realize that we are all at different stages on our evolutionary journey, and although there may be many people with more wisdom than me on this topic, I hopefully can provide some insight and potentially a different perspective on self-love. I know I will grow and evolve in this concept of self-love, so I imagine I will have future videos that will circle back to this topic as I progress on my journey. I'd also love to hear anything you'd like to share regarding self-love in the comments, so we can all learn and grow together as a community. I would also like to recognize that I believe self-love is not only a concept, but to truly embody it has to be a moment-by-moment practice of letting go of the lies and remembering our true essence. So this concept of self-love was not really on my radar until after my divorce about 3.5 years ago when I started my personal growth journey. I'd always thought I loved myself until my marriage revealed to me otherwise. As I share more about what opened up for me around this idea of self-love, I invite you to consider if you see any part of your story in mine. My intention in being vulnerable and sharing is to hopefully assist you in discovering whether you truly love yourself or not, and what steps you can take to embrace self-love. Maybe this is something you never had really thought about, and my hope is that by bringing awareness of what self-love is and isn't, you can fully embrace and love all parts of your true essence. It is my belief that we are all born as divine beings of love and light. Then sometime in our early childhood, an event happens that has our mind create this idea that I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable. And other events may occur in our life that reinforce this idea. I want you to think back to your childhood of when this initial event may have occurred for you and subsequent events in your life that may have occurred to reinforce this idea and how these events have impacted you. This initial event occurred in my life when I was about 7 years old. I was riding my bike behind my house when my dad came to pick my sister and I up. My parents were separated at the time, and my sister and I would typically spend the weekends with my dad. What I recall is that our dad was upset and drove away down our long driveway very fast, and I went running behind the car wondering why he was leaving without me. I thought I had done something wrong and my dad was upset at me and left. At the time, I didn't understand or wasn't able to process what had happened. As I got older and was delving into my past, I discussed this event with my mom and discovered that my dad had been drinking that day. At that time, he was addicted to alcohol, and my mom didn't want my sister and I riding with him after he had been drinking. Through later personal growth work, I uncovered that at that moment, my mind created a command: I don't trust you, you don't love me, prove that you love me. This is the lens I had been seeing the world through, of course without realizing it until recently, but this idea resided in my subconscious. I then spent my life trying to get love and prove that I was good enough and lovable. This mainly played out through achieving in school and my career, by being promiscuous starting at an early age, and by trying to present myself as quote-unquote perfect to the world. Events that took place in my marriage reinforced the idea that I wasn't good enough or lovable, and trigger many wounds from my past with my father. I would like to thank Peter Crone, one of my favorite teachers who has contributed greatly on my personal growth journey, for his words of wisdom. He states, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. Although it was a painful year of marriage, I later realized that life was presenting me with a person and circumstances where I wasn't yet free. and for that, I'm very grateful. In a recent interview I watched with Peter Crone, he also stated, "Until you love and respect yourself, what makes you think anyone else should?" This quote really hit home for me with what I experienced in my marriage. I realize now that neither my ex-husband or myself truly loved ourselves when we were married, and I was trying to have him prove that he loved me, when from my perception, he didn't have love for himself, let alone any to give to me. It was through a transformational program I took in 2020 that I had several of the breakthrough revelations I mentioned earlier. As a result, I feel a true sense of freedom, feel comfortable in my own skin, and I'm embodying and practicing self-love. I want you to know that you are good enough and you don't have to prove it. You're not what happened in your past. You're not what your family or friends may have said about you, or what society said about you, or what your mind may have said. Your true essence is a being of light and love. In the Bible, it says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." This is what I thought I was doing in my past marriage and in other relationships. Although I grew up attending church, I don't believe I fully understood what it meant to love your neighbor as yourself, because I never really understood what it meant to love yourself. I question if a lot of us really know what this means to love ourselves. From my perception, some of my family in the churches I had attended often presented mixed messages related to this idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. I got good at what I thought was loving others, when in reality I wasn't loving myself, so in hindsight, I don't believe I was authentically loving others either. I had this thought that I needed to be selfless, and it was selfish to love myself. I now realize, as Master Ko has stated, you can't only inhale or only exhale, you have to do both. As I have heard it been stated, you can't pour from an empty cup. So to truly and authentically love your neighbor, I believe you have to embody love. As Wayne Dyer stated, you can only give away what you have inside. Become an instrument of love. With where I am at currently on my evolutionary journey, I believe self-love is a choice to accept all parts of yourself. The light and the dark, all emotions and all thoughts without judgment, not right or wrong or good or bad, sinful or not sinful. They're just a thought or feeling that you created. Reflecting on Master Ko's teachings, remember that you're not your thoughts and emotions, but rather a spiritual being of divine light and love who can observe your thoughts and feelings and choose what you do with them. I believe we sometimes make our thoughts and feelings wrong and try to suppress or change them. I have learned that sometimes I have to be with an emotion and feel it, recognizing it's not me and it will pass, and to learn to love it. When we try to suppress or change our thoughts or feelings, it often shows up in various maladaptive behaviors, such as excessive drinking, overeating, binge watching TV, checking out scrolling through social media, excessive shopping, and the list goes on. Maybe you can relate yourself to some of those. It also can manifest as disease or illness in the body. When we can learn to be with all parts of ourselves and accept all these parts, that's when I believe true self-love takes place. Loving yourself just as you are at this very moment. This doesn't mean you don't try to grow and evolve. Rather, you accept where you are on your evolutionary journey. If you would like to take action to embody love, I highly recommend Gay Hidrick's book, Learning to Love Yourself, and the workbook, which provides learning to love yourself activities. I'd like to share a few more quotes with you. Another beautiful quote from Peter Crone. "It's easy to love all the parts that you love. It's easy to love the parts of you that you like or that you think are the greatest character traits. But where can you develop love for the part of you that you find to be imperfect, to the part of you that you find to be flawed? That's the very essence of what love means." Lastly, I'll leave you with a quote from Louise Hay, who I consider to be one of the pioneers of messages on self-love. "When we expand our thinking and beliefs, our love flows freely. When we contract, we shut ourselves off. Can you remember the last time you were in love? Your heart went, ah. It was such a wonderful feeling. It is the same with loving yourself, except that you will never leave once you have love for yourself. It is with you for the rest of your life. So you want to make it the best relationship you have. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. Also, please share to get this message of self-love out to the world so that we can all embrace self-love, as I believe the world would be a much more harmonious place. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and may you live a life of peace, joy, and empowerment while embodying love. live a life you love.